We want your calls on this. Is the pension promise unfair on younger workers? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring for this debate. The new financial analysis shows that the state pension triple lock will cost each worker in the UK an extra £1,200 in tax within 5 years. Now, the Office for Budget Responsibility is warning that our growing tax bill means that taxpayers will be forced to work longer in order to pay for the increase. Labour have committed to maintaining the pension promise, but is it fair on younger workers who will have to work longer to help pay for this? Angela?
I think we have to disabuse ourselves of the view that pensioners are somehow the nation's cash point, that they have loads of money, that they're spending their time on cruises and on the golf course and, you know, are solvent enough to be able to manage without any kind of increase to the state pension. Now, this triple lock, which the Conservatives and Labour agreed on, was there to ensure that the value of the state pension wasn't eroded by the cost of living. And the idea was that there should be dignity in your retired age, that you should have security. The very fact that you've reached a certain age means that you can't just go back to work in case you're running short. These are people who've paid into the public purse all their working life. So yes, it is very difficult for young people at the moment. I know, you know, my own kids are starting out. They're trying to buy properties. I don't know when or how. And all of these things are it's very clear. It's very different to certainly when I was a girl, about being that age and trying to get yourself established. But I think it is absolutely unfair for pensioners to pick up the slack for all the reasons that I've said. We have to keep that commitment to them to give some kind of security, precisely because, you know, they have worked all their lives and they just don't have that flexibility to go back into the office or to go back to work if they can't make ends meet.
It is a bit harsh to change the goalposts right at the final, you know, minute of the game for a certain sector of the community. They expect a certain pension. Do we not have to maintain that promise?
First of all, I think the Tories brought this in because they were trying to get those votes of older people. That's one of the main driving forces behind the triple lock. But it's always young people who are going to suffer. The furlough scheme, 70 billion it costs the country, that debt is going to go on to my kids. It's not going to be the pensioners who are paying for that now. Finally, not every pensioner who gets a pension needs their pension. There's something like 2 billion each year that is kept at the Treasury from people not claiming all the benefits they can have as pensioners, like the pensioners' credit and things like this. So I think people who don't need to have the state pension shouldn't be accessing it. There are some pensioners who, as you say, are struggling week to week, month to month. But there's actually a lot of pensioners who are doing fine, and for example, like with the baby boomers who have their own properties. Kids today are not going to be in the same position where they're going to get to 65 and already own a house or possibly a second house. It's not the same. It can't be. We can't just continually be putting money aside in a pension scheme that actually isn't affordable.
But the thing is that if by those terms of reference, then everything that you've paid all your life through national insurance and your tax receipts for, you should, if you are Mick Jagger or some other equally wealthy pensioner, well, he's still working, isn't he? Then, you know, you should have some kind of opt-out. You shouldn't use your local GP. You should automatically go private. So why take your burden off the health service? You can afford to go private. I think the politics of the kind of economic envy are not helpful. Yes, maybe there's scope for having an opt-out, the same with the winter fuel. You know, if you are somebody who really can afford to heat their home, then maybe you should be able to opt out from accepting that payment. But that should be an individual choice, because if you've paid in, you're entitled to take out, and it should be a matter of your conscience then under those sort of circumstances. But I think this idea of sorry that you're old and that you're whatever and just let the young...
Isn't the bit that makes the whole thing complicated is the fact that the whole idea that you have paid in so you should be able to take out, that it's not a benefit. The fact is you've paid your taxes, you've paid it, and so you should be able to just get it straight back out almost from the same pot. Just doesn't work economically. That money that you paid in has been spent. It's been spent on other things at that time. And actually the money that you are getting is money from taxes from working people now. And that's where the problem comes into this?
I understand there's not a very clear algorithm. It's not you can't do a complete cost-benefit analysis that say because you've paid taxes for 40 years. But equally, on the other hand, you could say because the roads have been maintained over the last 40 years, which people are now enjoying. So that's difficult to get into. I think that the key point is that pensioners are entitled to economic security that they've been promised and dignity, and to take that away is highly unfair.
So
they don't have the options. They don't have the options that younger people have, which are very hard.
Can we change it then? So we can say the cut-off, so once you're 50 years old, from then onwards, it's going to change. We're going to raise the pension age?
Well, look, we're going to be working longer as it is. There's lots of talk about this mission creep about making us work longer and longer before we can collect our state pension anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there will be any pension when I get to that age. For me, Christine from Manchester, what's your view on this? Do we need to protect the triple lock at all costs, or is it unfair on the young?
No, my answer to all this is that the basic pension, we're the ones that are struggling. Those on the higher rate should not keep having rises. It's us on the basic pension that are struggling. And when you say about pension credit and winter warm payments, they say that, you'll get 300. I get 150 and struggle to keep my home warm. I don't get the full £300 that they state. And basic pensioners are really struggling. Those on the higher rate don't need any more.
OK, but even on the basic pension, it needs to be paid for, and it's not a pot of money waiting there for pensioners to take out. So it needs to come from somewhere. And workers are therefore current workers are going to have to be paying more tax. And is that fair?
No, but the thing is, it's those on the higher rate that are being greedy, and they don't need any more money.
OK, I see what you're saying.
Even if us on basic pension, if we only had a tiny rise, we're happy with that. It's just that people that are on this higher rate
I've got you.
are getting too greedy,
and
it's awful.
Christine, you're kind of in line with what JJ's saying. You're saying it should be sort of means tested, so therefore those that need it. But then, isn't that punishing those that have put...
Not so much means tested, not so much means tested. It should be us on the basic need a bit of a rise, instead of keep giving them on the higher rate all the time.
Forgive me, Christine, then. So you're saying that those on the basic pension should still have the triple lock, but those on the higher rates of pension...
No, not triple lock, just a decent rise, just a small rise,
so you wouldn't
help us.
So, Christine, you wouldn't mind if actually they got rid of the triple lock and just said it had to go in line with the inflation?
Yes, because those that are on the triple lock have got enough higher pay rise because they're going into tax.
OK, Christine.
So why would they need to keep getting more and more?
Christine, thank you very much.
When us on basic pension are getting nothing.
Are struggling. Christine, thank you very much for your call, and also just displaying that actually those on pensions are struggling. Peter from Lincolnshire, what's your thoughts on this? Do you think it's unfair on the young workers?
No, I don't think it's unfair, for the reason being 1,500 over 5 years equals 300 a year. They weren't bothered when they picked up their average of £900 when national insurance went down. So what's they complaining about? They're picking up their pension now instead of paying the higher rate of national insurance as they used to. Then there would have been a pension, but they're picking up £600 a year today as a youngster.
Well, I do see where you're coming from with that, Peter. But generally, let's say millennials and Gen Z, the ones that are the younger ones in the working age at the moment, they're having the hardest time at the moment. It's 8 times harder for a millennial to buy a house than those that were buying houses in the 70s. That's quite substantial. Financially, they seem to have taken the steepest burden on the last, let's say, 20 years. And again, they're now going to have to pay this £300 extra a year in order to finance the pensions increase for other people.
Well, yeah, it's all right saying that, but when you've got £300 a year, if they just kept that £300 a year, Now, if the 25-year-old, multiply that by 40, comes under a heck of a lot of money and say, well, that will do my pension plus whatever I'm going to get. And officially then they've got their pension.
Do you think Gen Z will get a pension when they reach what age, 70, 80?
Well, I've managed it, and I was paying 35% income tax, and I was paying a higher rate of national insurance.
Yeah.
So
JJ,
now it's down to 20%, so they're making up a heck of a lot more money than I was when I was a kid.
I'm not sure economics works like that, but you were a bit exasperated by that comment,
Yeah,
JJ.
but I understand what Peter's saying, but this is the problem we have, is that some of the older generation think that they had it just as tough as the younger generation do today. But as you say, things are more expensive now. My parents bought their house for 25,000 quid, a 3-bedroom house in the Midlands. I couldn't get that kind of property anywhere in this country now for that kind of price. Things are, for the young people, I just think to have the burden of, we're going to keep on having to pay taxes towards these pensions, it seems in a process that is unsustainable. Our government is saying it's not possible to continue doing this.
That's the additional issue to this, isn't it? Is the fact that the triple lock on paper is just unsustainable. You can't go above inflation all the time with an ageing population and expect to be able to pay everyone a pension.
I think part of the problem, and you've hinted about housing, is that it's part of a wider picture. So you can't simply fix it by basic mathematics. If we don't have a government that will commit, and we've heard about all the promises, to more affordable housing, to addressing the cost of living crisis. All of these things still affect people right across the board. You know, when there was a promise not to increase national insurance or income tax, well, the pensioners they don't benefit that because they're not paying national insurance anymore. So they're not getting the net benefit from that economic policy. Meanwhile, you know, there will be people that rent, you know, at all stages in life, and there isn't enough sort of thought into how the whole landscape needs to change in order to make living a more affordable thing. Yes, for the young, but for people across the age range as well.
Peter, thank you for your call. Pat from Merseyside, the triple lock, is it unfair on the young?
Well, I don't think so, because when I left school, we worked at 15, and I've just recently retired at 84.
Oh, wow.
A month ago.
That's
and
amazing.
I worked from when I was 15, and so did lots of others. But I've got a friend that didn't work from when she was 40, and she gets a pension. And I don't really think that, you know, and then years of her getting a pension and not working from 40. But I paid in all my life, and I still pay tax on a small extra pension I get. And I don't mind that going for people who have had a lifelong condition that couldn't work from maybe that age. But we started work at 15 and worked up to greater ages. A lot of us still work to help our grandchildren in uni and whatever, which I did. And I don't regret that because I've got a work ethic. But now, the thing is why kids can't get houses and whatever is they're not starting proper full-time work until their mid-20s. So they've lost at least 10 years or more.
Pat, I absolutely hear what you're saying. There's more people doing higher education, and therefore they're not in full-time work until later. They're also saddled with a lot more debt once they do start work. Millennials are saddled with a lot more debt than perhaps your generation. Where there's still people that start work at 15, Gen Zs that are starting work at 15, absolutely. And of course, we've not worked for as long as you, Pat, because we've not reached that age yet. But I can promise you, by the looks of the way things are going, we will have to work until a ripe old age, far past 70, 75, before we can get our pensions. Comparing against the generations is incredibly hard. And as I said, a millennial now has to pay 8 times more. It's 8 times harder, nearly 9 times harder to get a house now than it was in the 70s. So it's a very different economic scape.
Do you not think we also have to consider that breaking this cycle of welfare dependency, the number of economically inactive people in this country, You know, Pat, obviously, I don't know what you did for a living, Pat, but you sound like you've been a real grafter your whole life, you know, and worked very hard. There are people for very legitimate reasons can't work, but equally, there has been this whole suspicion that the number of people that the whole issue of sick note Britain, depending on a generous welfare state, is sucking the lifeblood out of the economy as well.
Oh, so you would say focus on that rather than the
So what I'm
pensioners?
saying is it's not just about pensioners scooping up the excess cash because of the state pension.
Pat, thank you very much for your call, and that is a long time to be working, 15 to 84. Janice from Norfolk, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are more or less what the lady before me has just sort of said. That's sort of things that I was going to point out, and you know, I get a bit tired of being told that pensioners are a burden on the country, like that. You know, the lady before me said people worked at 15 you know, then, which I did, and I worked until I was 63 without a break. So I don't think the pensioners are a burden at all. There are a lot more people in this country that are far more a burden than the pensioners.
Burden is a very emotive and very negative comment. I don't think anyone's saying that pensioners are a burden. I think we're just trying to find a balancing act between, you know, helping our young people get on the property ladder, helping our young people get on, helping our young people pay off the debts that they face now, and looking after our older generation, and whether actually the triple lock is just unsustainable. And at some point, some party along the line is going to have to put their hand up and say, we can't afford this anymore.
No, I realise that, but I have heard people say on debates, use the word burden, and I do not like that term at all. And, you know, I understand what you're saying, but as somebody pointed out, not all pensioners are well off. I'm certainly not. And when my husband died, the widow's pension is no longer available. So what happened to my husband's pension? Because I only get a percentage of it anyway. I don't get a whole full pension that he would have got. So, you know,
Janice, I think goalposts probably have changed. There's quite a lot of people that have faced a goalpost change in their pensions, and sorry to hear about that one for you. But Janice, thank you very much for your call, and I hope that no pensioners watching this feel like we were referring to them as a burden at any point during that debate. You certainly are not.